assigned to the British 30th Corps with the British 40th, no, the British 50th McMillan.
James Garner, the beloved star of the Rockford Files and countless westerns, was known for his charm, wit, and quiet honesty. But before his passing in 2014, Garner reportedly revealed something shocking about a fellow Hollywood legend, Jack Elam. Elam, with his unforgettable crooked eye and countless villainous roles, was both admired and feared in Hollywood. For decades, fans assumed Garner and Elam were simply colleagues crossing paths in the world of Western films. But what James Garner confessed about Jack Elam in his later years peeled back the curtain on one of Hollywood's most mysterious figures. Was Elam truly the villain he often played on screen? Or was there a darker truth behind the camera that Garner felt the world needed to know? When James Garner first met Jack Elam, the two couldn't have seemed more different. Garner was tall, smooth-talking, and carried an easygoing sense of humor that made him one of the most likable actors of his generation. Elam, on the other hand, had built his career on being the bad guy of westerns. His disfigured eye gave him a menacing appearance, and Hollywood directors were quick to typecast him as the outlaw, the killer, or the shady character lurking in the shadows. Despite those differences, Garner and Elam found themselves working together in the same circles during the golden age of television and film westerns. At first, Garner admitted he was skeptical of Elam. Hollywood gossip painted Elam as a man who could be difficult, with a fiery temper and a habit of clashing with directors. But to Garner's surprise, the man behind the villain face was far more complex than anyone realized. Garner revealed that Elam was incredibly intelligent, witty and sharp when it came to Hollywood's business side. Before acting, Elam had worked as an accountant and even served as a bookkeeper for major studios. This background made him far more than just a cowboy with a menacing glare. He understood the money, the power, and the manipulation happening behind the scenes. Garner respected this about Elam, even though others dismissed him as just another character actor. What truly surprised Garner, though, was Elam's vulnerability. Beneath the tough exterior, Elam carried the scars of a hard life. His damaged eye, the very feature that made him famous, came from a childhood accident involving a pencil. Rather than hide it, Elam embraced it, turning what could have been a lifelong burden into his greatest strength as an actor. Garner admired this resilience and often described Elam as one of the most resourceful men he had ever met. Still, their friendship wasn't without turbulence. Garner revealed that Elam could be moody and unpredictable. One moment he'd be cracking jokes, the next he'd storm off set in frustration if he felt disrespected. Many directors didn't know how to handle him, but Garner, with his calm demeanor, found ways to ease the tension. The two developed a strange but effective balance, Garner as the approachable everyman and Elam as the unpredictable wild card. In private conversations later in life, Garner admitted that Jack Elam was a man Hollywood never fully understood. To the industry, he was a one-dimensional villain. To his colleagues, he was either a friend or a foe, depending on the day. But to Garner, Elam was something more, a man who carried secrets, regrets, and frustrations about how he had been treated by the very system that gave him fame. It was in these moments of reflection, Garner hinted, that the truth about Jack Elam emerged. Not the Hollywood stereotype, not the outlaw image, but the real man who lived behind those piercing eyes. And when Garner finally revealed what he knew, it wasn't about scandal or betrayal. It was about exposing the cost of being typecast, misunderstood, and underestimated, in an industry that only valued Elam for his crooked eye and menacing glare. One of the most striking things James Garner revealed about Jack Elam before his passing was how much typecasting weighed on his colleagues' spirit. While audiences adored seeing Elam as the sneering outlaw or the comic relief with a sinister edge, the reality was that Hollywood rarely allowed him to show his full range as an actor. Garner, who himself had the freedom to play everything from a charming con man in Maverick to a hardened detective in the Rockford Files, saw firsthand how limiting the system was for a man like Elam. According to Garner, Elam often joked that he had played more killers than anyone else in Hollywood. But behind the humor was a lingering bitterness. Directors didn't want to see him as the hero or the romantic lead. They wanted his crooked eye, his rough features, and his intimidating presence. For decades, This meant Elam was boxed into roles that never allowed him to stretch his talents. Garner confessed that in private conversations, Elam admitted he felt like he had become a prop, a visual cue to audiences that danger was near. What many people didn't realize, and what Garner sought to highlight, was that Elam had a remarkable comedic talent. In films like Support Your Local Sheriff and Support Your Local Gunfighter, Elam finally got the chance to lean into his sense of humor. Audiences who only knew him as the villain were stunned at his timing, wit, and ability to steal a scene with just a look or a perfectly delivered line. Garner, who starred alongside him in these comedies, said Elam lit up in those moments. For once, he wasn't the predictable outlaw. He was free to show another side of himself, but Hollywood wasn't quick to embrace that versatility. After the comedic westerns faded, Elam was pushed right back into being the stock villain again. Garner revealed that this cycle of being typecast was a source of deep frustration for Elam. "Jack wanted more," Garner reportedly said, "but Hollywood only wanted what they thought he was good for." This was the painful truth that Elam carried. No matter how hard he worked or how much talent he displayed, the industry only saw his face, not his skill. Garner also spoke about how this kind of typecasting wasn't just a professional burden but a personal one. Elam wanted his children and grandchildren to see him as more than the crooked-eyed killer. He longed for roles that reflected the humor, intelligence, and humanity he carried in his real life. Garner empathized deeply with this because, in his own way, he too had been pigeonholed as the charming leading man. But while Garner was occasionally able to break that mold, Elam's physical appearance made it nearly impossible. Hollywood, for all its glitz, was shallow, and Jack Elam paid the price for it. Still, Garner admired Elam's resilience. He never stopped working, never stopped bringing his best to every role, no matter how small or repetitive it might have seemed. Garner believed that Elam's perseverance was what made him a true professional. He could have walked away, but he didn't, Garner reflected. He kept showing up, and he made every scene better, even if Hollywood never gave him the credit he deserved. The tragedy, Garner noted, was that Elam's legacy became tied almost entirely to his appearance. The truth, as Garner wanted the world to know, was that Elam was one of the funniest, most clever, and most misunderstood men he had ever met in Hollywood. His career, while successful on paper, was also a reflection of how unforgiving the industry could be to those who didn't fit its narrow mold of beauty and heroism. By revealing this before his death, Garner ensured that fans would see Elam not just as the villainous face in their favorite westerns, but as a man who fought against Hollywood's limitations his entire career. To the movie-going public, Jack Elam was Hollywood's ultimate outlaw. His wild-eyed stare and crooked grin could chill an audience in seconds, and directors leaned into that menace every chance they got. But James Garner insisted that the real Jack Elam was nothing like the frightening characters he portrayed on screen. In fact, before his death, Garner wanted people to understand just how different the man was from his Hollywood image. Behind the scenes, Elam was not the snarling gunman or ruthless killer audiences adored. He was a storyteller, a practical joker, and surprisingly gentle in his personal relationships. Garner revealed that Elam was known for pulling pranks on set, sometimes hiding props, sometimes sneaking in improvised lines that left cast and crew in stitches. Far from being the grim outlaw, Elam thrived on laughter. Garner admitted that it was one of the reasons he enjoyed working with him so much. He could break tension with one joke, Garner explained. And in a business full of egos, that was a rare gift. But humor wasn't the only side of Elam that Hollywood rarely saw. Garner also described a man who carried scars, not just physically, but emotionally. The accident that left Elam's eye damaged at a young age shaped him in profound ways. While he turned it into a career advantage, there was always a part of him that resented being defined by it. Garner recalled late-night conversations where Elam confessed that he often wondered if directors would have cared about him at all without the crooked eye. Would he have been given more diverse roles? Would he have been allowed to play heroes instead of villains? These doubts, Garner revealed, haunted Elam throughout his life. Another truth Garner shared was Elam's reputation for having a quick temper. While some in Hollywood saw this as proof that Elam was difficult, Garner believed it came from years of being underestimated. Elam had spent his early career working as a studio accountant and knew the business inside out. When producers tried to shortchange him or directors dismissed his input, Elam's frustration often boiled over. Garner respected this side of him, describing Elam not as a troublemaker, but as a man unwilling to be pushed around by a system that thrived on exploitation. "He wasn't mean," Garner said. "He was just tired of being treated like a gimmick." Away from the set, Elam's personality softened even more. Garner revealed that he was a devoted family man who cherished his children and grandchildren. He spoke about how Elam loved to host friends at his home, often cooking meals and sharing long stories about his early struggles in Hollywood. While his on-screen image was violent and intimidating, in private he was thoughtful, reflective, and loyal to those who earned his trust. Garner's revelation painted a picture of Jack Elam as a man of contradictions, feared on screen, beloved off it, typecast as a villain, yet capable of deep humor and warmth, quick-tempered when disrespected, but tender with those closest to him. It was this complexity that Garner felt audiences deserved to know. For too long, Hollywood had flattened Elam into a one-dimensional caricature. Garner wanted people to recognize the depth and humanity that made him so much more than his crooked eye and villainous roles. Perhaps the most touching part of Garner's truth was his description of Elam's resilience. Despite the frustrations, the typecasting, and the misunderstandings, Elam never let bitterness consume him. He kept working, kept entertaining, and kept finding ways to laugh. Garner admired that more than anything else. Jack took what life gave him, Garner explained, and he made the most of it. Not many people can say that. By lifting the curtain on the man behind the villain, Garner offered fans a chance to see Jack Elam in a new light, not just as the memorable outlaw of westerns, but as a full, complicated human being whose life was shaped by both pain and perseverance. When James Garner spoke about Jack Elam in his later years, it wasn't to stir up scandal or to dig into the darker corners of Hollywood gossip. Instead, his goal was simple: to ensure that Elam was remembered for who he really was, not just for the villains he played. Garner had lived long enough to understand how Hollywood history can flatten people into stereotypes, erasing their humanity in favor of convenient labels. And he wasn't about to let that happen to Jack Elam. According to Garner, the greatest truth about Elam was that he embodied resilience. Born in Arizona in 1920, Elam had lived through the Great Depression, the hardships of rural poverty, and the devastating accident that left his eye permanently damaged. Any one of those challenges might have crushed another person's spirit, but Elam adapted. He turned a supposed weakness into the very thing that gave him a career. Jack never ran from what made him different, Garner explained. He owned it, and he used it to his advantage. This, Garner believed, was what audiences needed to understand. Elam wasn't defined by misfortune, but by his ability to transform it into opportunity. Another truth Garner emphasized was Elam's professionalism. No matter the role, no matter how small or typecast, Elam showed up ready to work. He brought authenticity to his performances, making even one-dimensional characters feel alive. Garner admitted that directors often leaned on Elam to carry scenes because they knew his presence added instant credibility. "You couldn't ignore Jack when he was on screen," Garner said. "He might not have been the hero, but he always left an impression." But perhaps the most personal truth Garner revealed was Elam's quiet yearning for recognition beyond the villain roles. While Elam laughed off typecasting in public, in private he expressed regret that audiences never saw the full scope of his abilities. Garner said that Elam wanted people to know he could do more. He could play comedy, drama, even tenderness. And when given the chance in films like Support Your Local Sheriff, he proved it. Garner believed this was the tragedy of Elam's career, that Hollywood didn't value him as the multifaceted actor he was. Despite these struggles, Garner described Elam as someone who never lost his sense of humor or his love of storytelling. Even in his later years, when work slowed down, Elam remained a fixture among friends and family. He told tales of his days in the industry, laughed about the absurdity of typecasting, and continued to find joy in the simple pleasures of life. Jack never let bitterness define him, Garner said. That was his real strength. For Garner, the truth about Jack Elam boiled down to one word: humanity. Beneath the crooked eye, the snarls, and the menacing persona was a man of wit, warmth, and determination. Garner wanted fans to remember that Hollywood's villains weren't always villains in real life. Some of them, like Elam, were simply men who made the best of the roles they were given, carving out legacies despite the industry's limitations. By sharing this before his death, Garner gave audiences a gift, a reminder that actors are more than their characters. Jack Elam wasn't just the outlaw lurking in the shadows. He was a survivor, a professional, a father, and a friend. Garner's words pulled back the curtain on one of Hollywood's most misunderstood figures, ensuring that Elam's legacy would be seen in its full complexity. In the end, Garner's revelation wasn't about exposing secrets. It was about telling the truth, about honoring a man who spent his life being misrepresented on screen. And thanks to Garner, fans can now look at Jack Elam's body of work not just with nostalgia, but with a deeper appreciation for the man behind the villain's glare.